Alright, in this video tutorial, I'm going to solve a quadratic inequality algebraically. So we already know how to graph these, but now we're going to solve these algebraically. So first thing we have 2x squared minus 2x minus 12 is greater than or equal to 0. First thing I'm going to do is, since we're solving, I'm going to make this equal to 0. Our next step here is we are going to solve this by factoring. So there's many different ways you could go about solving this by factoring. I'm going to actually factor this. You can use the quadratic formula if you're more comfortable doing that. Honestly, the choice is up to you. So when I'm looking at this, the first thing I notice is there is a greatest common factor here. All three terms have a 2 in common. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to divide the entire left side by 2 and divide the right side by 2. When I do that, I'm going to have x squared minus 1x minus 6 is equal to 0. So this is a little bit easier to factor. So what I'm looking for is I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to negative 6, but those same two numbers need to add to be negative 1. So two numbers that multiply to negative 6 but add to be negative 1. Those two numbers are going to be negative 3 and positive 2. So I have x minus 3 times x plus 2 is equal to 0. From here, I'm just going to keep on solving by factoring. So I'm going to have x minus 3 is equal to 0 and x plus 2 is equal to 0. Solving each of these, we get x equals 3 and x equals negative 2. Now we're not quite done yet. We have one additional step left. And the best way to do this part, I think, is draw a number line and visualize where these solutions are at. So if I have a number line here, we're going to have 0 in the middle, to have negative 2 down here, which is where one of my solutions is at, and then positive 3. So the next thing we got to figure out is, using negative 2 and 3, since this is an inequality, we need to figure out, are my solutions going to be on the inside and between negative 2 and 3, or on the outside, so lower than negative 2 or above positive 3. The best way to do that, and it's very similar to graphing, is we're going to test this point, which is x equals 0. So I'm going to plug that in. We would have 2, so I'm plugging it into the original problem. 2 times 0 squared minus 2 times 0 minus 12 is greater than or equal to 0. When you simplify this, you're going to have negative 12 is greater than or equal to 0. That statement is not true. Negative 12 is not greater than 0. This is false. So what that tells me is the shading will not be in between negative 2 and 3. Instead, our solutions are going to be on the outside. So the best way I do this is I'm going to write my 2 and my 3. We're going to keep the same inequality from the beginning of the problem. And since my solution's on the outside, I'm going to put my x towards the outside. So x is less than or equal to negative 2, or x is greater than or equal to 3. What would happen is if this became a true statement, because this is my solution to this specific problem, but if I plugged in 0 and I got a true statement, notice how 0 is in between negative 2 and 3. Well, then we'd have 2 and 3, and you would want to put your x in the middle, and then have your inequalities separating the 2 and the 3. So pretty much you put your x where your shading is going to be at. Our shading on this one is going to be on the outside. And that is solving a quadratic inequality algebraically.